To a whole nother level, can you feel me now? Armies in every city, definition of power. Players, are you with me? See the war is the prophecy, survival is the strategy. Rest in peace to my comrades, that's the seat. Organize the streets of time, man.
Tech 9? Have a nigga Mac James.
אתה רואה?
אני רואה מה זה.
לא, כולנו רואים את זה.
מה זה?
יואו!
יואו! מה
מה
זה?
זה, אמא?
מה זה? ראית?
James giving these bitch niggas a taste of misery. In my misery, bitches get with me. Never even got MAC. Get up in the misery. In my misery, bitches get with me. Never even got MAC. Get up in the misery. Taxi misery, leave unstop mystery. So fuck around with my head of cheese. Better leave these G's alone. When me and my nigga take to hit your home. Split your dome with the folk on. Make a nigga face smell like the ozone. In the mind of a psycho, what goes on? Till I begin next time with no clothes on. Murder shows on in the K-Town. Almost have a nigga that'll beat your ass down. Shoot you in the face soon as you hit the ground. Hit a nigga, split a nigga to give you a pound. 32 rounds, packed and extended. Crossing my niggas is not recommended. Tempted to put you in a lifelong body cast. You best guard your shit when it's body blast. Most straps that John Gotti has. So sick I sleep in the body bag. Pumping bombs like Saudi Ab to get low when the lack on poppy tag. Talking trash and get you took out. Both niggas post it just for look out. Get grim like Chris and have a cookout. Let me show you niggas who bigger than cook spout. Thieving, scheming, seeking demons. Smoke so much you kill your semen. Psychopathic human being. I so low I look Korean. Head steaming.
Congress shall now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, I'm sorry, this section is classified, dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified. Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified. This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape are released or otherwise become uncontrollable. Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strength. Should event occur in urban areas, Jesus, that's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed classified, body disposal actions shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground classified protected birthing centers, a new Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your...
Do you suffer from fear of losing your election? Are you terrified that voters will discover you've done nothing to improve their lives? Maybe it's time you talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex. In clinical trials, Incarcerex has been shown effective at reducing election-related anxieties by making voters think you're doing something about the drug problem. It's simplistic and fast-acting. If your problems continue or get worse, you can always double or triple your dose of Incarcerex. Whether it's addiction, therapeutic use, or just casual use, there's an Incarcerex plan for every American. Best of all, taxpayers, not you, will foot the bill. So talk to your spin doctor about Incarcerex today. Common side effects include loss of civil liberties, police corruption, racial injustice, increased terrorism, spread of HIV and AIDS, and violent crime. Bloated prisons are also a common side effect. Stop taking Incarcerex if bloating lasts longer than 20 years. If you're trying to balance the budget, keep families together, or protect human rights, Incarcerex may not be right for you. Do not mix Incarcerex with the Constitution or common sense. So start taking Incarcerex and keep pretending you're doing something about the drug problem.
All over the place. You're a psychiatrist, and you're author of a theory. Here's what she's saying. First of all, white people are dying out. Into the next century, everybody on Earth may be of color. And we're scared about it. Already we're a minority. Did you know that? I'll guess 25% of us are white, maybe less than that. And that's the reason we're racist. We're not only afraid of dying out, but we're also jealous because we have no color. You're laughing. How come we spend so much time in the sun trying to get brown? Can't make a baby of color. And that's the reason for racism and lynching. And how do you explain? Do you believe we're racist? No, we're not racist. Yes, we are racist. What is this, an accident that all the cities are becoming blacker and blacker while the outer reaches of major metropolitan are whiter and whiter? That's an accident? Fuck. When you get on an elevator and you're the only white person on the elevator, how do you feel? What'd she say? What'd she say? Frightened, she said? Oh, she's scared of elevators. Okay, here we go. Francis Cress Welsing, M.D. You are a Washington, D.C.-based psychiatrist, and you're author of the Cress, your middle name, we should say, theory of colored confrontation and racism. You call racism white supremacy. To be sure, a provocative and controversial theory on skin color and oppression. Well, I'm ready. So is this mostly but not exclusively white audience. Let them have it, Doctor. Boy, you need an expert to get out of your speeches?
No, now, let me just give you a little background. This paper was written approximately in 1969 and presented in 1970. It was written for a group of black psychiatrists who were looking at racism.
Yeah.
It was also written because as a psychiatrist and working in a hospital trying to treat black people and white people, but recognizing that the majority of the problems that black patients had in a psychiatric hospital, when you took a history, you would run smack into racism. So I knew I had to understand racism to help solve the mental health problems of black people. So out of my brain computer, putting in the question, why? Why do we see this behavior? Why have we seen it for hundreds of years? So I thought about these two things, basically two facts, that even though the white population says that people of color are minorities, that it is the white population that is the minority on the planet.
That's the reality you're saying.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That in spite of the fact that black people, non-white people have heard over and over again, you're genetically inferior because you are non-white. That in reality, white skin is a genetic recessive status, not as said by Francis Welsing. You see, meaning that if
you and I were to have a baby, the baby would have color, and you make the contribution and I don't.
That white plus color, well, wait a minute. It's not Francis Welsing that is concerned about the disappearance of white. Ben Wattenberg just wrote a book, The Birth Dearth. There have been multiple articles in the newspaper talking about the decline of Western populations.
And here's the Washington Post, just to name one. We are a depopulation bomb, the withering of the Western world. Here, incidentally, this was the percentage of the West's population in 1900, the turn of this century. About 30%. This is where we'll be less than 10% in the year 2075. Here's where we are about today, 15. So we're not having babies.
So whites are not having babies, and there is the concern about white genetic annihilation. In other words, I look at, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday holiday, and people will say, well, here's a man who talked about love. Why was he killed? And I say that the deeper logic is, what if all black and white people and non-white people and white people love? What would happen to white people? White would disappear. You see, just mix all of the people on the planet up together.
If race didn't matter, or color didn't matter, it follows with the jet plane.
No, I'm not saying if it didn't matter. I'm saying that indeed if there was a mingling of all of the people,
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, fine.
Absence of prejudice.
The ability, no, wait, don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we mixed all of the people presently on the planet, stirred them up,
the white freckle-faced people would be gone.
Genetic recessive status would disappear. And that if I did a survey and every...
All over the place. You're a psychiatrist, and you're author of a theory. Here's what she's saying. First of all, white people are dying out. Into the next century, everybody on Earth may be of color. And we're scared of it. Already we're a minority. Did you know that? I'll guess 25% of us are white, maybe less than that. And that's the reason we're racist. We're not only afraid of dying out, but we're also jealous because we have no color. You're laughing. How come we spend so much time in the sun trying to get brown? Can't make a baby of color. And that's the reason for racism and lynching. And how do you explain? You believe we're racist? No, we're not racist. Yes, we are racist. What is this, an accident that all the cities are becoming blacker and blacker while the outer reaches of major metropolitan whiter and whiter? That's an accident? Fuck. When you get on an elevator and you're the only white person on the elevator, how do you feel? What'd she say? What'd she say? Frightened, she said? Oh, she's scared of elevators. Okay, here we go. Francis Cress Welsing, M.D. You are a Washington, D.C.-based psychiatrist, and you're author of the Cress, your middle name, we should say, theory of colored confrontation and racism. You call racism white supremacy. To be sure, a provocative and controversial theory on skin color and oppression. Well, I'm ready. So is this mostly but not exclusively white audience. Let them have it, Doctor. Boy, oh boy, you need an escort to get out of your speeches?
No, now, let me just give you a little background. This paper was written approximately in 1969 and presented in 1970. It was written for a group of black psychiatrists who were looking at racism.
Yeah.
It was also written because as a psychiatrist and working in a hospital trying to treat black people and white people, but recognizing that the majority of the problems that black patients had in a psychiatric hospital, when you took a history, you would run smack into racism. So I knew I had to understand racism to help solve the mental health problems of black people. So out of my brain computer, putting in the question, why? Why do we see this behavior? Why have we seen it for hundreds of years? So I thought about these two things, basically two facts, that even though the white population says that people of color are minorities, that it is the white population that is the minority on the planet.
That's the reality you're saying.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That in spite of the fact that black people, non-white people have heard over and over again, you're genetically inferior because you are non-white. That in reality, white skin is a genetic recessive status, not as said by Francis Welsing. You see, meaning that if you and I were to have a baby, the baby would have color, and you make the contribution, and I don't. That white plus colored. Well, wait a minute. It's not Francis Welsing that is concerned about the disappearance of white. Ben Wattenberg just wrote a book, The Birth Dearth. There have been multiple articles in the newspaper talking about the decline of Western populations.
Yeah, here's the Washington Post, just to name one. We are a depopulation bomb, the withering of the Western world. Here, incidentally, this was the percentage of the West's population in 1900, the turn of this century, about 30%. This is where we'll be less than 10% in the year 2075. Here's where we are about today, 15. So we're not having babies.
So whites are not having babies, and there is the concern about white genetic annihilation. In other words, I look at, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday holiday, and people will say, well, here's a man who talked about love. Yeah. Why was he killed? And I say that the deeper logic is, what if all black and white people and non-white people and white people love? What would happen to white people? White would disappear. You see, just mix all of the people on the planet up together.
In other words, if race didn't matter, or if color didn't matter, it follows with the jet plane.
No, I'm not saying if it didn't matter. I'm saying that indeed if there was a mingling of all of the people, because
that's what I'm saying. Okay, fine. Absence of prejudice.
The ability, no, wait, don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm saying that if We mixed all of the people presently on the planet, stirred them up.
The white freckly-faced people would be gone.
Genetic recessive status would disappear. And that if I did a survey and everybody didn't have to, face anybody, if I said how many people who are white want their children to be white, want their grandchildren to be white, want their great-grandchildren to be white, want their great-great-grandchildren to be white. And I've gone all over the country in England and asked this question. Yeah. Everybody wants the children and the generations to remain white. Yes. If you do, then you have to do something to make sure that that happens. And I say that what the thing is that is done, and particularly in relationship to black non-whites, because we have the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation.
Because you're the blackest.
Because we, right.
The most color.
Right. We have this ability to produce melanin pigment. We have more of it than anybody else. And so the most pressure is on black people. As a matter of fact, the black people learn, all non-white people over the world learn. If you're black, stay back. If you're yellow, you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, mellow, white, right. I can go to England and the people can just say the same thing. Doesn't matter whether if you go to the Philippines, because there has been a confrontation of brown with white. Everybody knows the more pigment you have, the more pressure that is on you.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand why. I said the why is for the purpose of white genetic survival.
Right. And you're saying that blacks have no similar hidden, subconscious anxiety about their blackness being undermined by the presence of white?
We don't have that fear. And I think that this is something that is not understood. You see, in other words, if I don't worry about, as a matter of fact, under white supremacy, the non-white people try to get lighter. You see, because the less pigment you have, the less threat you are to white, and so the greater opportunity that you have.
Yeah. The mass inability of whites to live and attend school in the presence of non-whites, manifested by the patterns of black and white housing and education throughout this country, and indeed throughout the world, is seen, according to your thesis, in terms of the color confrontation thesis, as the apparent total psychological discomfort experienced by whites in situations in which they must daily face their color inadequacy when they confront their neighbors of color. You go on.
I predicted. Look, I wrote that in 1970. I said you cannot have integrated housing. You cannot have integrated schools.
You still believe that?
The evidence. I always look at the evidence. If Mr. Black and Mr. White live next door to each other, they have the same job, the same income, the same car, the same furniture. Yeah. They both walk out of the house in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Black. Good morning, Mr. White. Yeah. But Mr. White is still looking, but you got something that I don't have.
You're saying he's saying that subconsciously.
Right.
Now, wait a minute. All right, we'll give you a chance in just a moment.
Wait a minute.
Now, wait a minute.
Let's look at
They're nice people. You're really going to like them, I promise you. Once in a while, a couple of them stop before they come up here, and you're going to keep an eye on them.
Let's look at this.
Go ahead, look at it.
Very fortunately.
Now, let me just understand this. See, the reason they're groaning is, that's an awful bad rap to take. Let me just arrogantly try and reword what I think you're saying. Now, don't get crazy. Let me say.
Please,
Mr. White is looking at Mr. Black, and he's not consciously saying, don't you dare.
Not consciously.
So it is under him.
Not consciously. We could go on for 3 hours. Not consciously.
All right.
Okay. I am saying that this behavior is at the subconscious level, and there's a lot of evidence. For example, just on Saturday, the New York Times had an article talking about the percentage of people who want a tan. 66%. I have the article if anybody wants to look at it later. 66% of white adults think they look better with a tan. 70% of white adolescents think they look better with a tan. What do white people? Ooh, I look so pale. Now, this is not something that Cress Welsing is putting on people. White females even say their ideal mate is who? Tall, dark, and handsome.
Wait a minute. Just a minute. That whites do indeed desire to have colored skin can be seen by anyone at the very first signs of spring or summer. When they begin to strip off their clothes as many pieces as the law will allow, often permitting their skins to be burned severely in an attempt to add some color to their white, pale, colorless bodies, rendering themselves vulnerable to the dreaded skin cancer in the process. Most cosmetics also are seen as an attempt to add color to their skins. Such coloring makeup is even now being provided for the white male. Well, guess who has you-know-what on at this moment? And if you don't mind my saying so, I do. I put it on myself. I don't go to makeup. I have a shine on my nose I've got to take. But I feel better for a try. And I've got the whitest skin in the whole neighborhood. I'm telling you, no kidding. I'm not bragging. I'm saying as a matter of...
This is not, my discussion is not about making fun of white people. My discussion is trying to explain behavior.
I value your effort.
Why am I doing this? For example, when I was a very small child, I wanted to understand why black men were lynched. I asked my grandmother and parents, why would this be done? And my grandmother gave a statement. She said something like, well, some people just want to act ugly. But that wasn't sufficient, as a psychiatrist.
May I interrupt for just a moment? Here's the read on that, and I know you want to add to this or make it just a little more complicated. The black male was lynched and often castrated because of the white male fear of the black male's... The myth is the black male's extraordinary sexual capacity. So he was lynched by frightened white males who feared that if he ever got anywhere near the white women, that somehow the white male would be a sex. Now, you want to add to
his sexual capacity. What are we talking about? I say that the fear is that the black male can cause white genetic annihilation. And this is why the attack on the genitals, there's no history in the world of any non-white men attacking white men's genitals. But why do white men feel the need to zero in on the black man's genitals and cut them off?
Yeah.
You see, and a lot of this is played out in symbolic behavior in this culture. For example, the culture says, keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah.
Now wait a minute. Look at something that
Get there to this one second.
See, look at something that people do not look at. Look at the game of billiards. See, the psychiatrist knows that through games we play out subconscious activity.
Yes, they do.
Okay, now look at this game. Here's a game with colored balls.
Yes.
All over the table.
And guess who gets to shoot the ball?
The white ball knocks all the colored balls under the table.
And often saves the
black ball, right.
Till last. Because there's a specialness about the black. Yeah. Let me, Dr. Welsing, now, you're not surprised at the response of this audience. Just a couple of things here for the sake of our conversation. First of all, we welcome your contribution. That is, for what it's worth, I certainly do. Which does not mean, therefore, that I or this audience necessarily agree with everything you say. But let me tell you what I think is important. I don't think we've asked enough questions about this thing called racism, which has, in my opinion, the capacity to bring us down as a nation, if not, certainly not only here, but in many parts of the world. It is in the American bloodstream, and it's especially manifest here. So good for you trying to figure this out, because it's my, no kidding, it's my opinion, not enough smart people are really speaking to this. We run away from this. Another point you made, you think the token black is an effort to assuage this hidden feeling that we have? Is that, how do you explain?
Well, the token black, you might say that was under pressure, you see, that you have to, the civil rights movement, you have to include some non-white people. But every effort is made to move around that. Mm-hmm. And I understand, it's tragic, mm-hmm. and it's injustice. Yeah. And I'm not just saying here, I'm saying all over this planet, whether we're talking about South Africa. And see, one important example that people do a lot of surface talking about is the Holocaust. See how quiet it is? The Holocaust in Germany was because what? Because the Semites of the Jewish religion were said by the Europeans to be non-white people. The Holocaust didn't just occur.
So you think that there's...
Wait a minute. You see what I'm saying? If we have denial going on about this, all you have to do is look at what the Nazis are saying today. And what the Klan is saying today.
So you're saying anti-Semitism has the same root?
If you read Hitler, if you read all the documentation...
Anti-Semitism has pigmentation as it's under
to do with the Semites. Look at the part of the world that the Semites come out of. I say that the word Semite comes from the Latin prefix semi, meaning half. It's a word like mulatto. It means a combination of black African women, Greek and Roman soldiers, and you had that mixture. 2,000 years of continuing mixture in Europe made a lighter group of people.
Okay, can I just...
that were still considered to be non-white.
When you use lighter and... you say recessive, and you use the word recessive gene. I think I know what that means.
This is not my language. This is the language of formal genetics.
That's true. But you equate recessive with inferior. Now, just hang on 1 second. I don't claim to be the first one to bring this to your attention, but aren't you dangerously close to Joseph Mendel?
No.
How about Shockley?
No. Wait a minute. No. What I am trying to do is explain some very, very important behavior on the planet that other people have shied away from dealing with.
Yeah.
You see, and to say that because you talk about it, it's just like if somebody studied tuberculosis and say, well, are you against the tuberculosis organism? No, you're trying to understand it.
Well, but you do bring judgments. Obviously, when you equate recessive with inferior, that's not science. That's judgment.
No. I'm not. That's not what I say. I say that the people who are feeling an absence of color, that they look at themselves in that way. And they have a response to therefore say, if I can get in charge of all these non-white people, then I am going to be superior. So nobody is uncomfortable in the white collective with all the white superiority that goes on every day. Look at television. White. Wait a minute.
All right, I got it. Hold on a minute. All right, hang on just 1 second. Hold 1 second. There are a couple of things which you, listen, there are people out there who say, look at all the progress we're making. I am not one of those people. Nevertheless, there are examples of integrated communities. Truly are.
But see, the answer is not a question of are there a few black people living where white people live. The issue is that if we are going to have peace on the planet, there has to be justice. And white supremacy, where you have the tiniest number of people on the planet holding down the vast majority of people on the planet, happens to be the highest form of injustice.
Yeah.
And so if we are going to have peace, see, I'm not talking about destroy white people, I'm saying, but we do have to eliminate white supremacy. And I say in the back of that paper, the challenge to white behavioral scientists, help people who classify themselves as white become comfortable with their color and comfortable with their minority status, so that they are not feeling negative and then mistreating all of the people that they say are what? Non-white.
Are you there, caller? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here, Phil. Hi. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm white. I can't believe that she's saying that the white people would like to be, I'm assuming she's saying black, not of a darker skin color, but black. I myself am very, very fair-skinned, brunette with green eyes, and I have no desire to be dark.
Why?
Why? I like my color. I was attractive enough that I went to modeling school. I do admit that I do use blush. I do not use blush to, as you say, give myself color. I use it to accent my cheekbones, give myself better appearance.
Do you sunbathe?
No, I don't. And as a matter of fact, I love the beach, and my husband and I, we've gone to the Bahamas a few times. When we have, I have to wear sunscreen. You know, I don't turn tan. Okay. I get red.
Right.
I grew up on the beach, and I have a minimal tan. But
but I'm asking.
Well, hang on 1 second.
I want to be clear. Is she saying I want to be dark, but I don't want to be black?
Yes.
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 And
so you'd like to be a little darker than you are?
No. No, I wouldn't say so. I'm very pleased with my color.
Well, then why do you put rouge on?
To accent my cheekbones.
Highlight the cheekbones.
But why do you suntan? Because the American Dermatological Society would
She does,
prefer...
probably for that reason.
But she goes to the beach.
She does go to the beach.
Because I like the
I
water.
gotta go.
I like the water. I grew up in California.
Let me try one more. Are you there, caller? Go ahead.
Hi. I'm also white, and I'm very comfortable with being white. I think that it's crazy to think that white people want to be black. You know, we might want to have a little color, but I wouldn't want the features of a black person. And as far as...
She does not want the features of a black person. You see, this is...
Hold on.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, in other words, that's racism, but pigmentation isn't?
Well, no, I'm saying that to say I wouldn't want to be, I mean, I can be happy who I am and not say something is negative about the other person.
Well, look, we've got a break here. Is there a, you know, one of the agonies here is half of this audience does not believe that they're racist.
Wait, well,
I am not more than half.
Let me ask this.
You can't fix it if you don't know you have it.
Well, wait a minute. I want to ask.
How do you explain what's going on here in this country?
I want to say then, who is? That's like going to Germany. I went to Germany in 1957. And I wanted to live with German people and ask them, did they understand what they were doing?
Yeah.
You know, taking their neighbors away and burning them up. Did they understand what was happening? Everybody that I talked to knew what was going on. They did nothing. But if you go and say, well, now, who believed what Hitler was saying? Nobody. Everybody says no. You see, every single person says no.
So
I didn't have anything to do with it.
People who are saying they're not racist, you're accusing them of doing it.
No. I'm not accusing. What I would do is, when if you have to take a break, is give my definition. You see, give my definition of what I say that racism is.
A functional definition of racism, white supremacy, which you identify with white supremacy, is therefore, for all practical purpose, as follows. The behavioral syndrome of individual and collective color inferiority and numerical inadequacy, which includes patterns of thought, speech, and action as seen in members of the white organization or race. And we'll be back in just a moment.
People are racism. Okay, there is a lot of people who do have that in them, but I think the majority of the people like people as they are. And if you're educated...
You mean like your kind, you mean?
No. All kinds of people. It doesn't have to be your kind, because I can look at a person...
Any of it? This thing we call
No, because I live in Colonia, and we have a whole development of black people, okay? And, well, wait, no, I went to school with them, okay? And I learned to deal with them. I think that if you learn to... Well, we mixed as a group. In other words, we weren't different. We weren't treated different. So we were all one kind of person.
You hang on a minute. What's the matter? What?
This study that was done in 69 and 70, I'd like to know what you've done lately to erase and eradicate racism and to improve
How do you
the
feel about what she's saying?
I don't care for it at all.
I want to just say that I feel I am a racist, but every black that calls Whitey a Whitey is also a racist. And
Wait a minute. Let me answer that. You see, within a family, people might call each other names. But when we come to the white people on the planet, the majority having organized themselves for white genetic survival, then when a white person can determine what is going to happen to a person of color, that is a difference, because then we're talking about a system of power that can say you can or you can't, or if I want to go back to Germany, because people do a lot of talking about the Holocaust. When the Semites were told, put on this yellow star because you're not white, and you can't go to the university, and you have to live in the ghetto, and you are going to be removed from your homes, that is power. It's not just a question of somebody saying, I don't like John, I don't like Betty. When you have the power to make it impossible for people to live a constructive existence, then that's a difference.
What we're trying to figure out is why we want that power to do that to another person in the first place. And you're saying white people do it to people of color because they feel,
I think it's a matter of economics more than anything else. And if you're a fair person, you're a fair person. And if this, I don't care who is my neighbor, if they can afford to be my neighbor, if they are of the same economic ability that our family have, then they're fine. They're welcome to be my neighbor.
We'll be back. I'll give you a chance in just a moment. Everything's studied. I mean, figure it out, we study it. Except racism, either whatever scholarship there may be about it, we seem to be running away from, or we're not attracted.
My friends, the information that you are about to witness from all of my years of research is the most important. It's been hidden in plain view the entire time. This is the ultimate secret, and it's about to be exposed. I have hundreds of government documents, textbooks, white papers, where for over 80 years, the elite of the Western world have talked about adulterating food and water to sicken and sterilize the population for the purpose of eugenics. It's all covered in the book Eco-Science, written by the White House science czar, John P. Holdren, where they talk about a planetary police state to carry out the forced sterilization. They also talk about covert systems in the water and food to sterilize the population. Now, this was written decades ago, before he was White House science czar. Now, suddenly, the stuff in this book is all over the news. They're selling it to the public as if it's a good thing. You see here before you what an average person would buy when they went shopping at the store. Not everything here is bad for you, but much of it has compounds and artificial chemicals that have been added that are extremely toxic and bad for your health, and they have known this the entire time, and they have approved them for use. Let's start with aspartame. You cannot go to the grocery store now and buy any type of even regular sugar gum that hasn't had aspartame added to it. In the 1970s, Searle tried to get it approved, and they couldn't. It took them 3 separate times, because in their own studies with monkeys, large portions of them that were fed it died and contracted cancer. Now we have mainstream news articles, and the EU has done a major study finding lower birth weights, early birth, and yes, miscarriages from women that drink aspartame-laden soft drinks like Coke Zero. What is aspartame? It is the fecal matter of the E. coli bacteria. They took it and genetically engineered it. They can feed it toxic waste, and then it defecates aspartame. And it has so many bad health effects, it's just unspeakable. This is being done by design. It's also very, very addictive. But let's just go ahead and move away from aspartame and talk about McDonald's and chicken McNuggets. Now, I remember a decade ago or so reading health advisories claiming that a form of plastic that's used in silly putty, basically a type of silicone, was in the chicken McNuggets, but also in many other TV dinners and other foods. It is illegal in every other nation in the world to add these chemicals to the food, but it's not in the United States. The big secret is all of this was done by design by the FDA. Look at all the drugs they've approved, and then it comes out later that they knowingly approve them when these drugs are causing heart attacks and cancer.
Good morning, folks. My name is Wayne Barboza, and I'm going to be your host for the next few minutes. I'm broadcasting live from CapeVerdean.net, Providence, Rhode Island. Be sure to watch our show on Channel 18, Thursday at 5, and Saturdays at 9:30. Half-hour shows don't do us justice, so we have websites. Our website is taboo.So and Rhode Island firstfatherhood.info. Now, the major thing about this whole project that we're working is that we woke up one day and found that we were still enslaved, and when we were told to bring our financial house in order, we realized we didn't own nothing. So, make a long story short, we wanted to know why. So Parting Ways Project is not only to find out why we're in the condition we're in, but how to do something about it. And we know that we can't go to people and ask for help. So what we've done is we came up with a plan. And that plan is confidential. You hear me? Confidential, why? Because there's people out there that would like to stop us from surviving. Yes, stop us from surviving. They've taken our freedom away, and they're trying to enslave us again. Now, this is a long story, so it doesn't come out cheap. So you got to do your homework. You don't take nobody's word for nothing. You do your own homework. Now, if I tell you there's a plan to get rid of our children and get rid of us, and you don't do no homework, don't say I didn't tell you. And if I tell you that there's things going on the planet that aren't all natural, and that you need to protect yourself with knowledge. Without knowledge, you're going to make some bad decisions. And just try to imagine. You wake up one morning and you don't get that check that you expected. You don't have that job that you expected. You don't have a house that you woke up with. You don't have nothing anymore. Who do you turn to? And that's what Parting Ways is all about. Who do you turn to? Are they trying to get us so scared of the disasters and craziness that we end up back in the churches and praying or somebody from outside to save us? Do we go crazy and burn up our communities like we did in the 60s to protest the way we're being treated? What are we going to do right or wrong? And who's in control of all this? Well, that's what we're going to examine today on CapeVerdean.net. The day before, the day after, we're in the middle.
The thrill of the thought that you might give a thought to my plea cast a spell over me. Still I say to myself, get a hold of yourself. Can't you see that this never can be? You go to my head with a smile that makes my temperature rise like a summer with 1,000 July.
Are you enjoying the music? Well, you should, because what we're about to hear is not just my ideas, not just my thinking, my theories. What you're going to hear are the radio stations all across the world and what they're talking about. Things that we won't hear on our local TV stations. And that's if we had time or watch the news. And our children have no clue because they're being entertained. And they're not being entertained by you. Is there a plan? Is something wrong? Well, if you don't know by now, then it's too late. So God bless you. And please do your homework. You have an obligation Hey, Valentine.
Hi, how you doing?
How's my love?
I'm good. I'm good. What's up?
Huh?
What's up? Because I'm here at work.
Oh, I thought I caught you before you went to work because I didn't know if I'd see you in the morning.
Well, I don't know what time because I got to go to hospice tonight too, all night. So right now, but I'm with someone else right now.
Well, as long as you know, I'm thinking of you and you're my only Valentine.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Would you do me a favor today?
What?
They're going to have that, I don't like holidays and stuff, but that's a ritual. So why don't you say a prayer for us and our love?
Okay, I will.
Okay?
All right.
You got to last forever.
Okay, I will.
Okay, love you.
And I will probably call you before I go into hospice when I leave here.
Well, just in case.
Okay.
Love you.
If I don't call you, that means I got busy.
No problem, as long as you know.
Okay. All right. Good night. Love you.
Love you too.
So we always say at the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
All power to the human family. Once again, this has been a wonderful infotainment, edutainment edition of the Artist Presents We All Be Radio. Please feel free, family, to participate. I'm your host, R2C2H2, the artist, also known as Brother Ron. You can call in at our number at area code 646-652-4593. That's area code 646-652-4593. If you're scared to get on the air, you can hit us up via email at r2c2h2@gmail.com. Once again, that's alphabet R, numeric 2, alphabet C, numeric 2, alphabet H, numeric 2@gmail.com. And the chat room is also officially open, so if you got some comments you'd like to make about today's show, some questions you need answered, feel free to put it in the chat room discussion, and we'll probably read them on the air for our honorable and distinguished guests. As you all may know, this month is Women's History Month, and also the month before that was Black History Month. And it is truly an honor to have on this honorable guest for this show. We're talking about the ISIS Papers Revisited with Dr. Cress Welsing. Really a phenomenal scholar, brilliant scholar, humanitarian. Her magnum opus, the ISIS Papers, which came out about 20 years ago. Really is a landmark work that's up there with, you think about David Walker's Appeal, or you think about anything by Frantz Fanon, or by a lot of leading scholars from the diaspora. This is like up there with them, like in the top 5, top 10, I would say. And it really would change your mind, because it will blow your mind. It will manifest you and take you to higher planes of thinking, and not actually being more self-sufficient in terms of your thoughts and your actions. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce the one and only, a true hero to the people, a hero for all time, Dr. Cress Welsing. How you doing today, ma'am?
I'm
What do
doing
we all
fine,
do?
and certainly thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you, ma'am. And you are like this. I mean, I just taste like a Rosetta Stone for us in terms of how to deal with this global phenomenon known as white supremacy. And also, I'd like to introduce my co-host, coming out of the mighty NOLA, true extremist extraordinaire, a beautiful sister, both within and outside. Sister Jazz, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome back to the family. You doing okay?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor. It's a very important topic. You got Dr. Cress Welsing, one of our true pioneers in liberation thought. And I'd like to talk to Dr. Cress Welsing. Like, is racism, what is racism exactly? How will you define it?
Well, let me state my definition of racism, because this is the most important thing that black people have to understand in the 21st century. All of the problems that we face, all of the issues that we confront are related to this very powerful dynamic that people do not want us to talk about, but it is the one thing that we all have to get a comprehensive understanding of.
My definition of racism is, first of all, racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. There's no such thing as black racism or yellow racism. Racism means power to determine what happens to other people. So my definition is racism, white supremacy is the local and global power system and dynamic, structured and maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined, which consists of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response, as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth, a planet upon which the vast and overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white, meaning black, brown, red, and yellow, by white-skinned people, and all of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. Now that might seem a little bit complicated to some, but to break it down, everybody needs to think about President Barack Obama. His father was a black man. His mother is white. Because black is a genetically dominant trait and white is a genetic recessive trait, when those two individuals got together, the child that they produced is non-white or black or shade of black. And this will always happen. And because people who classify themselves as white, see, they don't fool around and call themselves Euro-Americans. They are absolutely clear. They call themselves white. They trick the non-white people into calling themselves such names as Asian American, African American, but they call themselves by a genetic term which keeps them oriented. And so just imagine if the overwhelming majority of people on planet Earth are black, brown, red, and yellow, meaning dominant in terms of skin coloration. If they were free to move around the planet and the men of color related to the minority number of white females, then white would disappear. People who classify themselves as white determined as far back as the 15th century when they began to come out of Europe and they realized that the majority people on the planet were colored people, black, brown, red, and yellow. If the men had sex with the women, they realized that all the children ended up looking like the mothers, not the fathers, meaning white would disappear. And from that point on, they knew that they had to dominate all of the people of color on the planet. That domination was called various things. It was called imperialism, colonialism, neocolonialism, but all of it meant people with white skin who classify themselves as white had to, by any means necessary, maintain control and domination of the colored world majority. Otherwise, they would genetically disappear. Now, we have not understood that. People have focused on, oh, the problem is economics, or the problem is religion. Currently, right now, we hear people talking about, and you have a person in Congress whose name is King, talking about the Muslims this, the Muslims this, the Muslims are terrorists. He is talking about a religion, but fundamentally he's talking about colored people. It's like during the Second World War. Adolf Hitler talked about the Jews are doing this, the Jews are doing this, we must kill the Jews, or we must destroy the Jews, or we must put them in concentration camps. If you read Hitler's work, he wrote a book that's entitled Mein Kampf. He says in that book that he was not really interested in their religion. He said they are not white people. And all you have to do is look at the map where people of the Jewish religion originated from in North Africa. So these were, the word Semite is the same as the word mulatto. When people from Europe began to invade the countries on the northern part of Africa, they produced a mulatto population. They called that population Semites, meaning half black and half white. And so that mixed race, when those people began to move up into Europe, and they began to realize because of the genetic dominance of people of color, that white would disappear. And so Adolf Hitler came along and said, we are going to kill these people. And so he rounded up the people, put them in concentration camps, and eventually gassed them or otherwise destroyed them. Now we may think, oh, nothing like that can ever happen again. As a matter of fact, the Semites of the Jewish religion have a slogan, never again. Never forget and never again. They even have they have Holocaust memorial museums in different parts of the country. The major one is here in Washington, D.C. But in spite of that, I maintain it is happening again. How, in what form does it take? It takes the form of the unemployment, first of all. The unemployment of black males, forcing them into the selling of drugs and using guns. Then you make laws to put them in long-term incarceration when they use those drugs and use those guns. And so you are removing a huge segment of the black male population. The definition of genocide is when you interfere with the reproductivity of a given group of people. And just like everyone talks about now, 70% of black families are female-headed, single-parent, female-headed households. Now, you can't have this sustained development of a people when the men are being destroyed, and black men are being destroyed. That's why black male children are dropping out of school. They're more in prison than are in the colleges. And vast numbers of unemployed. They say that white unemployment is like 9%. In many of our communities, it's 40, 50%, if not more. Men who are unemployed. And another thing that we see happening is because there are no men in the homes, black male children are being effeminized. And we have movies that are coming out, the Tyler Perry movies, and there are a couple of other movies that are coming out where black men are wearing dresses. At Morehouse College in Atlanta, it used to be the capstone of black male education. The president had to come out last year and say, black male students are not going to be allowed to wear dresses or high-heel shoes. You see, so if you turn the male population into females, you are engaging in genocide, even though it is not on the surface recognized as such. But this is indeed what is happening. Now, black people are not talking about, we don't have a single spokesperson. You know, like of our spokes, we got, smart black people. but every black spokesperson who gets to go to the White House or gets to teach in any of the colleges or universities is afraid to talk about racism, white supremacy. Because if you talk about racism, white supremacy, you will get in trouble. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, when he was getting ready to be elected, he said that this important topic of racism needed to be talked about. If you remember the Attorney General, black man Eric Holder, both of these are the first black men in these exalted positions. And Eric Holder came out with his very important statement, are we a nation of cowards because we are afraid to talk about racism? And I maintain until proven otherwise, these two black men were told, I don't care if you're Attorney General, I don't care if you're the President of the United States, you are not going to talk about this critical topic, racism, white supremacy. So the only thing that black people can talk about are the symptoms of the disease. Like, I'm a physician. I've been a physician since 1962. That a physician knows that if a patient comes to your office complaining of various symptoms, you know, let's say coughing, headache, maybe fever, the bad physician will say, okay, you have a cough, let me give you some Robitussin. You have a headache, let me give you an analgesic, an aspirin or something. You have a fever, let me give you an analgesic for that. A good physician will look at the patient, examine the patient, and say, are these all symptoms related to a disease process? If they are symptoms related to a disease process, I need to understand what the disease is so I can treat the cause of the symptoms. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like police brutality, driving while black. Those are symptoms of the disease of racism, white supremacy, although I don't really call racism, white supremacy a disease. It is a political construct to achieve a specific end result. You see, but I can talk about police brutality for days. I can talk about black male children dropping out of school. I can talk about all children doing poorly on exams. I can talk about single-parent households. I can talk about all of those things as separate entities. But it's just like if a house is flooding, a dumb person just goes and gets a mop. A smart person is going to say, where is the water coming from? And let me cut off the water. Because I can mop for 1,000 years and the water will keep coming. That's just like a main, if a water main breaks, you see, the water is gushing down the street, people are drowning, and somebody says, well, let's get water, get some buckets and start throwing the water over here. The smart person says, where is the water coming from? Let's cut off the main pump to stop the flow of the water. Now, this is what we are prevented from talking about, and if a black person mentions racism on the television, then the white host of the television show or the radio show will start screaming, you're playing the race card.
Right.
See, the whole deck is racism, white supremacy. But we have to understand exactly what it is. Neely Fuller, who wrote the textbook for victims of racism, and who was the first person, a black man in the District of Columbia, the first person to say racism is a global system for maintaining the power equation. of white power over a relative non-white powerlessness. And he says, if you do not understand white supremacy racism, what it is, and exactly how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Now, this is where we are now. See, we don't even understand why, after we just passed through February, right? The civil rights movement. And in the 60s, when black people had their dignity and their self-respect and their courage, and they were going to march and get the vote and get public accommodations, even while police on horses were trampling them down and beating them up with billy clubs, and some people died in that struggle. The people were attacked with water hoses. But their dignity and their pride and their self-respect kept them moving forward in spite of the counterattack on the part of people interested in maintaining white supremacy. I maintain that the system saw, wait a minute, if we let these people maintain their self-respect and their dignity, their respect for themselves and one another, then the system of white supremacy is going to be in trouble. So what we have to do is turn these people around. And so then what did we end up with? Because we didn't understand what the system was. We thought it's just like during our formal period of enslavement, which was a phase of racism, white supremacy. During that period, black people who were enslaved, we felt if they just took the chains off, we would be okay. And so you had slave revolts, and then you had Lincoln emancipating the slaves in order to keep the white people together as a union, not because he loved black people.
Right.
And so the slaves were freed, and we thought, wonderful. And the black people started doing different things. And then the people who classify themselves as whites say, wait a minute, we cannot have black people running businesses. We can't have them holding political office. So what we have to do is have the Ku Klux Klan, establish the Klan, where people would be beaten up, the men would be lynched and castrated, people would be driven out of their homes and their property confiscated. So, in other words, the emancipation was turned on its head, and white supremacy was reconstructed. Like they call period of Reconstruction. Some people turn that around and say, well, that was when people went into black people went into political office. Reconstruction was, once the power was taken away from the slaveholders, the slaves were emancipated, but we had to give the power back to the slaveholders, and whether the slaveholders were in the South or whether they were in the North. In other words, white people had to maintain their power. And so, after the Civil Rights Movement, where the laws were changed, and so then the system said, wait a minute, we cannot have these black people going forward talking about black is beautiful, black pride, black dignity, black self-respect, black power. So what happened was the system said, what we're going to do, we're going to tell them they can be movie stars. But what we're going to have them do in those movies, they're going to be drug sellers like Superfly. They're going to be selling drugs. The men are going to be cursing out the women and beating up the women, and the men are going to be shooting and killing each other. And so that the black people started thinking, oh, they're paying us money. And we think it's not black power, it's green power. So people were being paid to engage in their self-destruction. But not understanding racism as a system, they went forward. Then you had young black people coming forward, creating what they called hip-hop. And one of of the first major records was Fear of the Black Planet that people had taken from Public Enemy, took that from the paper I wrote, the Cress Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism. But the system said, wait a minute, we can't have these black people listening to a political message. So what we have to do, they don't understand what we're doing. They're just focused on making money. So what we can do is tell them, no, we want dirty, trashy lyrics. And we will completely annihilate their self-respect. In a short period of time, we will have them calling themselves niggers and dogs and gangsters and thugs and bitches and hoes, and we will have annihilated completely their self-respect, and they won't have a clue as to what has happened to them. And just this past week in Washington, D.C., in Crystal City of Virginia, a group of young people, young adult people that were supposed to be giving out hip-hop awards, what did they do? In a big hotel, all dressed up. They started fighting each other, kicking over tables, breaking glass, hitting each other over the head with chairs. It was a complete and absolute disgrace. Now, as a psychiatrist, I say, if you listen to the lyrics, that for the most part have absolutely nothing to do with self-respect, then you will understand, well, this behavior is logical. This behavior is being listened to by all the people who are fighting each other and all the people who are killing each other in the street. The system of racism, white supremacy, wants to see black people out of the picture. And so, yes, now the videos we want you to make, the movies we want you to look at, black people will be demeaning and degrading themselves, and we won't have to overtly do anything. We will set them up, and they will destroy themselves and one another. Now, this is where we are.
And Dr. Wilson, I want to ask you, Sister Jazz, you have to ask Dr. Wilson?
Well, I agree with, I've agreed with everything, I've been so quiet because I agree with everything that has been said thus far. But I just want to know how you really, like something, a plan, because my thing is that I agree, right? I know that we come from kings and queens and scholars and inventors and explorers, and part of who we are now is the fact that we have been denied our history. We get a month or whatever, but it at the same time that we get a month, they separate our history from the world's history. So blacks and minority Americans, we have a separate history, so we don't get to learn it all the time in school. And I don't know, I've been in school 20 years, essentially, like my whole life. And I'm just now finding out about our rich, wonderful history because it isn't something that is taught. But I just don't know. Well, what are your thoughts, really, on how that we can get our self-respect back, to get our self-esteem back? Because it's one thing to have it stolen from us, but now we're kind of just giving it away. We call each other niggers, and we call each other bitches, and
but let me not cut you off, but just as I was just saying, we are in the presence of a system structure that we do not understand. See, you ask, what do we do based on what do I understand the problem to be? And that's why I went through that explanation. I said racism is the problem. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois in 1903 said the problem of the 20th century is the question of the color line, by which he meant the system of racism, white supremacy. And Mr. Neely Fuller came along in the mid-20th century and said, this is a system. This is a total system for maintaining white power over non-white powerlessness. See, it's critically important that we understand what we are talking about. See, anytime a person says, well, what do we do? Do about what? What is the problem? See, it's just like a person has to understand fire before they know how to put a fire out. If a fire breaks out in the house, a person who doesn't understand fire will say, here's a can of grease. Let's throw the grease on the fire. And the fire will get bigger because grease will enhance the burning of the fire. The person who understands fire will say we need water, or maybe we need to get out of here as quickly as possible. So what we want to do is jump over, and this is why black people keep saying, we got to get an agenda. We got to get an agenda. We got to get an agenda. We got to have a conference and get an agenda. An agenda becomes elusive as long as the problem has not been defined. We can't do anything without understanding what it is exactly that we are dealing with. And we can talk about black people were the first people on this planet, the first human beings. We're the mothers and fathers of everybody on this planet. But nobody on the continent of Africa has discovered the answer to the system of racism, white supremacy. And this is our challenge today. This is our challenge for the 21st century. So we can't jump into what is to be done until we fully understand what is the problem. See, racism, white supremacy necessitates an attack on black people in general and black male persons in particular. Why? Because it's only the men who can impose sexual intercourse, which is why, following slavery, black men were accused of looking at white women, wanted to think about looking at white women, and they were lynched and their testicles and penises were cut off. And they were hung in trees. The men had to be attacked. And there has been no cessation of the men being attacked, even though we have a black man sitting in the White House. Right. But he has no power to talk about racism, white supremacy, which is a specific problem of black people.
Dr. Wells, I want to add to that because I know we're talking about the symptoms, and I know that I talked to a friend of mine in the radio business down in Louisiana, and he had sent me a press release about, it's like, there's a lot of black males in Louisiana, for example, that are being tasered to death. And you look around the country with Oscar Grant, you know, getting killed at the BART station. And you look at in New York City with Sean Bell, and even like with the ascent of a black president, there are more black males being tasered by the police throughout the whole country. That's not really being reported on the news. And would you agree that racism is also a mental illness and also a sexual dysfunction then? If we're talking about racism in these terms you've been talking about.
No. See, that's like, in other words, see, there's some people who prefer not to talk about Adolf Hitler had a plan of racism, white supremacy, and destroying anybody who could cause white genetic annihilation. Mm-hmm. But people don't want to talk about that. So some people say Hitler was crazy. Mm-hmm. No, Hitler had an idea and a plan, and the majority of the German people went along with Hitler. We are going to kill and destroy the people who we classify as non-white, whether they're Semites, or whether they're gypsies, or whether they're the black people in Germany who were the remnants of the people left over from the black soldiers who were in World War I. So the problem is a problem about understanding white supremacy, and Hitler, I say he's not crazy anymore. It doesn't make sense to call the people who practice racism, white supremacy, crazy. No, the white minority realized in the 15th century that they were a minority on the planet and they could be genetically annihilated. And they decided, we don't want to be genetically annihilated. So we have to control the non-white people, especially according to the color code. If you are black, get back. If you are brown, stick around. If you are yellow, you're mellow. And if you're white, you're right. Because black people, people who have the most skin color, have the greatest genetic power to cause white genetic annihilation. It's just like in my office last night. I had a parent telling me about dark-skinned, beautiful black lady, telling me about how difficult a time she had growing up because people were calling her, you're real black. Her daughter now has the same problem. I had a parent come to me who told me, my daughter says she's going to commit suicide because the boys tell her she's too dark to date. It's just like Kanye West said, there wouldn't be hip-hop video if it wasn't for the light-skinned black girls. Because we don't want dark-skinned black girls to be in our productions. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, see, this is self-destruction that we do not even know we have. We just think it may be cute, I guess. But what, you see, white, the people who classify themselves as white are a tiny minority on the planet. So they have to program a large percentage of the non-white people who will hate themselves and hold up white supremacy. So those are all the non-white people, whether they're in Africa, Asia, in this part of the world, who want to bleach their skin, meaning I hate my color just like the white people hate my color. And I want to be white, and I want to have long blonde hair, and so I buy hair that's from the Asians. Like I predict they'll be taking the scalps of dead Asian people and transplanting that on the heads of people who don't want to have short hair.
Oh, wow.
See, just like plastic surgery, it'll graduate to that. You see, or people can go into a clinic and say, I hate my black self, so I want to have a sperm from blonde Scandinavian, and I'll pay $20,000 for that, and then I'll have a light baby because I hate my color. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am. I also want to jump into too, like you said, something about the hip-hop, which is a great point. You know, today is like the 14th anniversary of the passing of Christopher Wallace, a.k.a. Notorious B.I.G. And my sister was talking about what they were talking about on Twitter today. They were saying, would Notorious B.I.G. be as successful as Jay-Z if he was still alive? And a lot of folks say, no, he wouldn't be successful because he was too black, he was too dark.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was too dark, and he wouldn't be accepted. He's too dark, and he was too ugly. And he was already, fat, of course, but they come on, because he was darker than Jay-Z, and Jay-Z was lighter skinned, Jay-Z would still be more successful than Notorious B.I.G.
See, so you can see all of this, I call this psychological brainwashing. You see, it's just like black men putting on dresses.
Right.
This is psychological castration. See, if a black man wants to give up being a male, and so he'll put on a dress, he has been subjected to psychological castration without even realizing and understanding what has happened. You see, or I'll be a part-time female, and I'll be on the down low. All of these are behaviors that are related to the specific stress of racism, white supremacy. You see, which is like annihilating black color, annihilating black masculinity, because this is the threat that I perceive, which is why, police brutality and the so-called police officer, white police officer, will shoot a black male, and then he'll say, I thought he had a weapon. Well, the weapon he has is genetic, is his genitals.
Right.
Do you see? But he'll say, oh, I thought he had a gun. But he subconsciously is aware that the black male's testicles, genetic material are much more powerful than his, and can cause, it's causing white genetic annihilation. So these are things that we must understand. Black people, if I could wave a magic wand, black people would not be dancing anymore. Every black person already has a PhD in dance, PhD in singing, PhD in playing ball. Now it's time for us to start being quiet and serious and thinking. But see, this is why they want us listening to banging loud music that'll, give you sensory overload and cut your brain off from being able to do any sustained thinking, critical thinking. You'd just be acting like a robot who has been programmed to self-hate. Now, this is what we have to begin to understand, because if a system is structured for their genetic survival, it's illogical to think that the system is going to set up the conditions for the maximal development of the black genetic and constitutional potential, or the maximal development, in economics, education, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. See, and another way that we have been brainwashed is giving black people the image of God as a white man. See, if you are presented with the image of Jesus as white, the brain, that's supposed to be the Son of God. Well, the brain doesn't compute the Father has to be black. The brain computes the Father must be white. So black people are, thousands and thousands of black people are in churches every Sunday. White God, please love me. I love the white God more than I love anybody else. The God looks just like every other white man that they see on the street. But we don't, because we don't understand. People just say, oh, no, that's religion. That doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I mean, you said the cross was like represents it was a phallic symbol. It represents the black male's genitals. And
say that again, dear.
You said it represents the black male's genitals, and penis, the cross here, the cross.
The cross. That's what I maintain. You see, because if you drew a picture of the testicles, well, it's in the ISIS papers.
Right.
Where you have testicle, phallus, testicle, and you just make a line drawing through that, and you have a cross. And so if you hang a little white man on there, a dead white man, these are symbols that the brain crunches. And the brain gets a whole paragraph or a whole page of information just looking at a symbol. It's just like a computer compiles data on little tiny circuits. And the brain crunches data into symbolic material so that you don't even have to talk about what the symbol means. That the brain will also register it. You see, it's just like when people who classify themselves as white see a swastika, or they see the stars and bars in that cross, even though they're at an angle. They understand subconsciously what that is all about. Do you see? Now, I would prefer that instead of black people, like in the state of South Carolina, where the people who classify themselves as white insist upon showing the stars and the bars. I think if black people see, if we acknowledge that we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, not a system of democracy. We are in a system of racism, white supremacy. And so the swastika or the stars and bars, if black people would say, Well, you know, we wish that we were not in a system of racism, white supremacy, but we recognize that we are. And so these symbols of white supremacy are appropriate for the system. It's just like the Star-Spangled Banner. That symbol is red, white, and blue. And the flag is just like looking at a lateral view of the phallus and the testicles, where the flag is red, white, and blue. That means white skin through which you can see blue veins and red arterioles.
Right. Dr.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I was like, there's so many people want to get in. I mean, they got so many questions they're raising. I got the phone lines down. I just want to get in some people to talk to you because, I mean, it's not every day. And we got a brother named Marcellus Lovelace, a brilliant artist from your hometown, Chicago. We want to wish you an early happy birthday. Y'all know your birthday is on March the 18th, correct?
Oh, thank
So he
you.
want to wish you, I mean, he's really said, I hope that, you inspire him with your words and with your actions. And I just want to hit up the Delta. There's so many people from around the country have called in, from the Virginia, from Cleveland, from L.A., from all around the world. And I appreciate all the love for Dr. Welsing. So I just want to return that to her. Sister Margaret Blocker, a Civil Rights Veteran Hall of Fame, recently inducted in Selma, Alabama. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So welcome to We All Be Always. Sister Margaret Blocker, true freedom fighter and singer, veteran of the Mississippi Civil Rights Campaign. How you doing tonight, ma'am?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
All fine. I can't complain. You got anything to say to Dr. Wilson? I want to add.
Yeah, because yeah, I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Well, you know that I'm really into these schools and what they're doing to these kids, to these little black boys in particular. Got setting them up to go to prison. I mean, they just virtually telling them if you don't read, you're going to jail. You're not going to finish school and you're going to jail. They don't say that to a little white boy that can't read. If he's in the 4th grade, it's only directed at the black male. They don't even consider, I mean, if that's the only group that's been designated to go to jail in case they can't read. And the teachers are falling for it. They going along with that nonsense. And I just don't know.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, based on what I have been saying, that this is tragically true. But if the system is what I say it is, this is logical that there would be this kind of attack on black males, black people in general, black males in particular, beginning with little children. I talked to a 6-year-old in my office, smart as he could be, in the 1st grade. What does the teacher say? I want to hold him back. The smartest little person, I want to hold him back. I'm just looking at genius. Do you see? So this is the problem. But just complaining about it, I would prefer that black people be able to say, instead of not wanting to talk about racism, that black people say, we now understand the system of racism, white supremacy, and we understand this attack on black people in general and black male persons in particular. And we're going to talk about what this system is. In the meantime, we are going to stop playing with sex and breeding and studying as we were programmed to do in formal slavery, to produce more slaves. We are going to respect ourselves as black people. We are going to respect our genitals, and we are not going to play with sex and producing children that we cannot take care of. Because we have to be the primary and fundamental teachers of our children. And I see so many black male children who are in a state of depression that turns into bad behavior because they're missing their fathers. I'm not saying the fathers are bad. The system says as much as I can cause black male unemployment, I'm going to do it. Because if a black man is employed, he can take care of his family, and his family will be stabilized. I'd rather spend $45,000 or $50,000 keeping a black man in prison than giving him a WPA job, helping to build the infrastructure. No, that would strengthen black families. So I would rather spend that money putting him in prison, having him freak his sexual behavior, hopefully pick up HIV/AIDS, and when he comes out, he can spread it to the rest of the people, and they can just die off. Now, we have to understand that. And don't spend any time hating white people. Just understand what they do. Don't spend any time being discourteous and disrespectful. Take all of our energy and understand what we have to do ourselves for our maximal development. And genetically, we're not inferior to anybody. Everybody on the planet has come from us.
Right.
But we have been reduced to the lowest level by this system of racism, white supremacy, and we have to retrieve ourselves.
Okay, we're going to take a... Go ahead, Dr. Welsing, you finished?
No, I would say if I could wave a magic wand,
Uh-huh.
you know, and probably the listeners, everybody would be cursing me.
No,
But
no.
if I could wave a magic wand, black people would be saying, oh, wait a minute, we don't have sex until we are 30 and 35, and until we are married, and no more than 2 children no closer together than 3 years apart, because we are in a war.
Mm-hmm.
War is being waged against us, and we have to produce strong people. And strong people require that they have strong, mature parents when they're very young. I would be out of business as a psychiatrist if people were getting their emotional needs met when they were very young. Just before you call, talking to a patient,
Mm-hmm.
smart, but feeling I can't achieve my dreams because I didn't get my emotional needs met when I was young. My mother was 17. She didn't know how to be a parent. See, these are not bad people. These are circumstances that are imposed upon us. But the correction is not going to come from the system that is imposing it. We have to begin to understand and understand how we make the correction. Sex is fabulous, but so what? When you're in a war, you are not jumping out of a foxhole talking about, I got to get some sex, when bullets are flying around. You'll get some if you get home, and you go get some maybe if you know how to end the war. So we're going to have to radically transform what we were thinking about sex. It's like, again, for 300 years we were enslaved.
Right.
We were breeders and we were studs. The children were transformed or shipped to another plantation, just like we're sending children to foster care.
Right.
Going from one foster home to another foster home, being sexually abused in this one, not taken care of in the next one. So we have to understand, not hate ourselves, not demean ourselves, not call ourselves names. We have to say, this is fascinating. We didn't really understand this system. Now we're beginning to understand the system, so we know what our individual personal agendas have to be, what our collective agenda has to be. We have to be responsible for the maximal development of the black genetic and constitutional potential.
All right, we got one. Take another call from me if you want to talk. Area code, you might run area code 301. You on the air?
Yes,
752.
Thank you.
All right, welcome, man. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for waiting.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this is Black Achievement in your chat room.
Hey, brother, Black Achievement. Nice to finally talk to you.
Yes, finally.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was tired last time. Thank you, Dr. Welsing. I got to go back to the beginning of the show to get a better understanding. I got 2 very connected, related questions. The first is dealing with the recessive dominant gene. How far should we take this? Example would be Halle Berry. Halle Berry, black father, white mother. She says she's black. Okay. she has a baby with a man says he's white. Callie says the baby's black.
Well, do you see what I'm saying? In other words, the father is either playing dumb deliberately or he is dumb. In other words, see, it's not a question of a white person having sexual relations with a black person and producing an offspring that has color. I mean, everybody has probably seen in the People magazine the little baby. The little baby is just a light-skinned black child. You see, there's zillions of light-skinned black people who are a product of immediate miscegenation or historic miscegenation and the preservation of light color, like don't marry anybody darker than yourself. So the fact is when that little baby grows up and goes to school, white people are not going to be looking at that little baby and saying she's white.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're going to say, oh, she's colored.
Right.
She walks in the bank to get a loan, she's colored. She walks in to get a job, she's colored. So it's not up for discussion, just like you have white women who are having babies by black men. And then she teaches the little baby, you're not black, which means she hates black. If she loves that black man and she knows what goes on in the society, she'll tell the child, we live in a system of racism, white supremacy. You might be a little lighter than your father, but you are still considered black. My people, your grandparents, consider you to be black. And so you're going to have to respect yourself as a black person. See, this playing games about mixed race and all of this nonsense is just to confuse black people, confuse people like Tiger Woods. So he can't play golf anymore because he didn't understand racism, white supremacy that says, why should a black man be the highest paid sports person? Let's trip him up. Let's have a whole lot of white women have sex with him, and then let's call him on it. And he won't know what hit him. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't been able to win golf since. So we have to understand racism, white supremacy. Be glad that we finally understand that it's about white genetic survival. And it's not going to change just because somebody says, I'm not black. See, you can walk in a bank and see whether you get a good loan and a good interest rate and determine whether you're black or not. Right. And so if a black person, see, it's like any tragically Halle Berry's father, maybe he wasn't around to give her knowledge and understanding about racism, white supremacy. You see, he might have been, like many people, well, I want to escape being black, and so I'm going to marry white. Like Neely Fuller says, when a black man, this is a black man talking, when a black man is poor, he wants a job. This is under the system of racism. When he gets a job, he wants luxuries. When he gets luxuries, he wants a white woman. Now, black men can attest whether this is true or not. And they need not be ashamed any more than it's the same thing as if I invented 3 pills. One pill you take on Monday and you can wake up and your skin is white. The second pill you take on Tuesday and it'll cause your hair to be long and straight. The third pill you take on Wednesday and it'll have you, it will give you so-called white features. Now, if I went on eBay selling those 3 pills, I'd have more money than Oprah on the weekend. You see, I could sell them on Wednesday. I have more money than Oprah on the weekend because all the non-white people in the world would be buying those pills because they have been brainwashed by the system of racism, white supremacy. Wish that they were white and to look in the mirror when they see themselves and say, I'm ugly, I hate myself. I mean, many people saw the CNN program with Anderson Cooper where he had 3-year-old white children looking at different color faces and saying a 3-year-old white child in the strip of faces, so you had a little white face, the same face, but given different colors, from white to black, and different shades in the middle. And the questioner said, which child is ugly? A 3-year-old white child immediately points to the black child. Which one is dumb? Immediately at age 3, points to black. Which one is bad? Immediately points to black. Then testing little black children. Which one is ugly? Black. Which one is dumb and stupid? Black. Which one is bad? Black. You see, so children at the age of 3, 5 years of age, have already been programmed by the system of racism, white supremacy. The white children are programmed to think they're smart and beautiful, and the black children are trained to think of themselves as ugly and dumb and stupid and bad. So anybody who denies the existence of racism, white supremacy, is either being a criminal trying to fool people of color, or they are indicating their stupidity.
Dr. Wilson, when you think about Michael Jackson, I'm curious to get your insight into him. I mean, he seemed like he was conscious about, black history, about Africa and things like that, but you look at what he did to his body.
Well, wait a minute. What did Michael say? See, I look at Michael when he was a child, and he was a beautiful black child. But what did Michael say?
He had no childhood.
His father teased him about his appearance.
Yes.
Yeah.
His father told him he was ugly. See, and how many black children today are hearing somebody call them, you little ugly nigger, you little black nigger, you this, you nappy-headed so-and-so, and yelled at and hit and slapped. You see? So this is the self-hate that the stresses and the pressures from the system of racism, white supremacy, are teaching us and then training us to call ourselves niggers and call that a term of endearment or a bitch. See, we're the only people on this entire planet who have been taught to sing and praise our demeanment. See, I'm a bitch. I'm a hoe. I'm a gangster. I'm a thug. I'm a dog. I'm a bow wow. See, at a certain level you can say, well, this is a crowning achievement of racism, white supremacy, because if you can train people to demean and degrade themselves, you can oppress them forever. You can even program them to kill themselves, and they won't even understand what happened.
Well, sister, we got another Sister Chandra out the Delta. You there, sister? Sister Chandra.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm sorry. Oh, good evening. Yes, thank you.
Welcome to the show. You're part of the family. Dr. Welsing is on the line.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Welsing. I was just so engrossed in what was being said.
Okay.
I was interested in the idea of brainwashing.
Of what now?
Of brainwashing.
Oh, okay.
And
well, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Go on.
See, well, brainwashing is, you can consider brainwashing if you turn on your television set. Let's say I'm a black person, you're a black person. You turn on the television set, and all you see is white, 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 white. Then you might see a commercial like NyQuil had a commercial with a grossly overweight black man laying in bed with the covers all rumpled up. He looked as big as an elephant. You see what I'm saying? So it was a grotesquely demeaning, showed a grotesque face, and he's laying in a rumpled up bed with his arm over the black female who's in bed. They would never show an image like that of a white person. Absolutely never under any circumstances. So imagine little children sitting in front of the TV. In a lot of situations, children are propped up in front of TVs when they're 1 year of age and younger. And so they start seeing white, 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 white. Even the cartoons are color-coded. White, 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 white. And Sesame Street used to have little dark creatures coming out of garbage cans in a ghetto situation. Go ahead, Go ahead,
I'm just with you. I'm thinking of Calvin in the McDonald's commercials. That when they start having these commercials, starting off with the black people talking to each other in the street. Calvin got a job. Calvin got a job. What?
Okay.
Calvin got a job. Calvin from the street.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that commercial.
And then you see Calvin with his hat to the side, close up, and then it's just how he turns around his hat with McDonald's to the front. Welcome to Mickey D's, may I help you? Oh, you know, Calvin got a job, like McDonald's saved us, you know.
Exactly.
No.
See, but in other words, just like now, what we have to do is like there's an African proverb that says, each one teach one. Mm-hmm. We have to help each other. See, if I told a dirty joke on this show, that dirty joke would be all across the country within a matter of 48 hours because we would call and pass it along. But something serious, we don't pass it along, but we have to learn how to pass knowledge and understanding along to each other and begin to help each other understand as quick as a wildfire what racism, white supremacy is all about, and not talk about this is not, don't spend a erg of energy hating any white people or being discourteous and disrespectful. It's just like if you were playing chess. You were on the black side of the board, opponent is on the white side. You wouldn't spend any energy hating your opponent. You would really say, play your best game, and I'll be time enough for you because I know how to play the game of chess. So we have to know how to counter racism, white supremacy. Neely Fuller, in his first book, Textbook for Victims of Racism, gave a list of 10 behaviors that are basic in beginning to counter racism, white supremacy, and I call them the exercises in black mental health, in black self-respect. And those behaviors are stop name-calling one another, stop cursing one another, stop squabbling with one another, stop gossiping about one another, stop snitching on one another for reasons of personal gain. Stop being discourteous to one another. Stop being disrespectful to one another. Stop robbing one another. Stop stealing from one another. Stop fighting one another. And stop killing one another. Now imagine if black people immerse themselves in those behaviors. See, we're always talking about we need black businesses and entrepreneurs. But as long as we are willing to be discourteous, disrespectful to each other, that means if you come in my store, I don't care how I treat you or what kind of service I give you. Right. You see, or if we are robbing and stealing from one another, as opposed to, if anything, demanding that we want employment and not incarceration. It ought to be a 2 million man march to Washington, D.C. of black men with the same dignity and respect that they had when Farrakhan called them to Washington, D.C. in a 2 million man march, and people saying, we demand jobs. Don't want to go to jail.
Right.
That's not who we are. We want jobs. And if you have money to spend to fight other non-white people in the Middle East, we want to end that fighting. And we want that money to be used so that we have jobs. Men work. And if men don't work, they're not going to feel themselves to be men. And we are men, and we want to work. We want to support ourselves. We want to be able to support our families and support our children. You see, now I add to that list. Stop using and selling drugs to one another. Stop making black children think that as children they can be adequate mothers and fathers. Stop pretending that racism does not exist. Stop throwing down trash where black people live, work, and play. Every black person needs to get a PhD in broom. That means sweeping up the trash, no paper, no glass, no dirt on the street, in the gutter, around where black people live, work, and play, because we are not trash. And we do not live in a trashy environment. You see, and stop allowing racism, white supremacy to divide black, brown, red, and yellow people. It's called victory by dividing and conquering.
That's right. Well, a lot of people know it's Willie Lynch, but you actually gave me a black oath, a pledge of allegiance for black people that I posted on We All Be and that I'll read at the end of this program. I just want to get another call in right quick. Area code 215 down the air. Welcome to We All Be. Got anything to say to Dr. Welsing?
Yeah, I'm calling from Philadelphia. My main question is, doesn't the current Black American culture doesn't it kind of parallel what the plantation culture was, and doesn't the notion of what is black and white defined in America by the one drop rule, does that notion kind of really apply in different places around the world? But certainly in South America, that one drop rule can't really apply because you have such a large mixed race population. So, so actually what I'm saying is the notion of what is black and white here defined in America is not exactly what is defined as black and white in different places in the world. And won't this notion of black and white change as the 21st century moves along, because you will have more of these mixed race populations around the world?
Okay, let me comment in this way. People who classify themselves as white are not confused about what white is. So that if you go to places like Brazil or Central America, you can have all kind of mixed colors. But at the top of those mixtures is what? White. And at the bottom, it's black. And you have all kinds of little shades of tan, which is just like black people in families rate themselves many times on who's the lightest and who has the straightest hair, and name calling and all of that stuff goes on to this day. Now that's what goes on in Central America. They just have much more of a mixture, but they are not confused as to who is at the top. Just like when you fill out the census, the first thing on there is not Euro-American, it's white. So like I said, this is what they would do on the plantation. The slave master would rape an African woman, raped all of them, and then you start making mixed race, and so then you pit the people against each other based on color, but they're all slaves. And so you bring the lightest ones into the big house, and you rape them in the big house. but they're all slaves. But you have divided them because in the big house, there are only 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the field, there are 150 slaves. If the 150 had not been divided and competed against each other, they could overtake the 6 in the big house. But as long as you programmed them to fight each other, which is what Willie Lynch was all about, how you train them to hate themselves, fight each other, and you overtake them. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So we have to see, people want to be confused. Like, I know people who are working with young children, and you have little young black children, and they're just the different shades of showing that the grandparents were raped. See, anybody who's not crystal black is just showing evidence that the great-grandparents were raped.
Mm.
And you have black people going around. I'm so glad that they're not saying this. They're saying, I'm better because I'm light-skinned. That's just saying, I'm glad that my great-great-grandmother was raped by the white man. I'm so glad that my grandmother was raped and demeaned. You see, and anybody who is walking around with colored skins who's saying, I hate myself, or I'm a little lighter than this person, and I don't want to be that. I'm mixed race. You know, poor little black children. I'm not black, I'm mixed race in the 2nd grade.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? I hate myself. I wish I was closer to white. I hate myself. And so all of the talk in Black History Month means nothing. See, we want to go through the ritual of a Black History Month and talking about blacks did this and blacks did that, black kings and black queens.
Right.
And the summation is, I hate myself, or I'm content with the black children in my environment, in my home, having internalized the self-hate that the system of racism, white supremacy is taught. But see, as long as we don't talk about there's a system of racism, white supremacy, and we just talk about a system of democracy and capitalism, well, we're just in a complete state of confusion.
Yeah, that's true. We got a caller, area code, I'm sorry, you just called 443, you on the air. Welcome to We All Be Radio. You want to say, everything you said, Dr. Wilson? 443.
Hi. Hello. Hi, my name is Keisha. I'm in Texas. It's an honor to say hello to you, Dr. Wilson.
You're breaking up. Okay. Yeah,
Hi.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello to you, Dr. Wilson. I have read your book, The
Yeah, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. It's still kind of, the quality is unclear. Do you have anything you want to see? Hello? We good. It's still breaking up. If you can, I'll tell you what, type it in the chat room and I'll ask her. Because it's not a good quality. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Sister Isha.
And if I could, if it's okay, if I interject for a moment,
go ahead. Yeah.
So now that we know, right? So now we're becoming more aware. We're realizing that we're really just the 2011 version of slaves. You know, we only have what we have been allowed, and now we want to, conquer the system. How do you think that we should go about it? Like, do you think we need to go about it by school? Do you think that we need to just say, well, we're done with the exercises?
Did you hear me just go through the exercises in black health and black self-respect?
But if we, and I agree, stop calling each other.
See, we can't do calculus. It's like, in other words, oh, go ahead.
No. I just couldn't hear what you're saying.
See, in other words, we can't jump over the basics. That's like talking to children about spelling, but they don't know the ABCs. Or talking to them about doing calculus, and they don't know how to do addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and fractions. We have to be willing to get the basics straight, because you might say we have been miseducated. We don't even have the language to talk about racism, white supremacy. And this is what I'm trying to do in this discussion, to jump over and say, well, we understand this, but what do we do? I'm talking about what to do. Just like I've said, if people stop playing with sex and producing children they can't take care of, and turning those children over to foster care where they're going to be systematically abused in many cases. See, there are things that we don't want to hear. We don't want to hear, oh, you mean I can't play with sex? We don't want to hear that. And so we don't hear it. We don't want to hear being courteous and being disrespectful to one another. But this is what I'm saying, that this is like completely transforming the way that we think about and understand what is happening to us. Because if we can begin to understand, it's like if a person understands fire. If they are on a sailboat and a fire breaks out, they know essentially what to do. If they are at the top of a building and a fire breaks out, if they're in the forest and a fire breaks out, they don't have to keep standing still. What do I do? What do I do? Because they have been helped to understand fire. So now we are trying to understand racism, white supremacy. The system is saying, if you think I'm going to help you, you are mentally disturbed, because I've given you all of the evidence in the world. Look at your schools. Look at how your children are coming out of school. Look at how they don't know how to behave in a classroom. Look at how they're jumping up and down and yelling and screaming so much that they can't learn. Look at their behavior on the school bus. Look at their behavior when they're teenagers and they go to a club and they can't entertain themselves without fighting and killing each other. So if we don't understand, the system says, I designed this system for my genetic survival. You, with your powerful genetic material, are a threat to my survival. I really have you on a genocide march, but I've got you so busy dancing and singing, you don't even see what's happening. Or going to a Tyler Perry film where men are dressed as women and laughing and falling out of the seat. It's so funny. I've trained you to laugh at your own death.
Well, Sister Rashida typed her question in the chat room. Sister Isha, we had technical difficulties with. She wanted to know, why is it okay to be a racist and not be penalized, but it isn't okay to be an anti-Semitic? You know, we know what happened last week with the designer over in France, saying the things he said. Now he's facing jail time and possible ruining his career. So, like, what do you think about that, Dr. Wilson?
Well, see, in Nazi Germany, you couldn't talk about anti-Semitism. Now, people who Hitler said were Semites and the Europeans that are Semites, they have now come to the United States and reclassified themselves as white. They say they're white because by comparison, we look like we're the black people. Or the Hispanics are the black people, but because they were in Europe and highly miscegenated, many of them, they come to the United States and say, well, now we're white. Do you see? But because of their experience in Europe, where they lost 1/3 of their total world population in the gas ovens, because Hitler said, you're not white, and I'm going to kill you. And they wanted to be accepted as white. So they're like us. we want to be accepted as white, and so we don't want to think about racism. That was the situation they were in. They want, no, I'm German. Hitler, no, you're a Semite. You're not white. I'm a German. I'm a German. They wouldn't do that. So they learned a very painful lesson. You see, but coming to this part of the world, they say, well, I'm white. I'm not a Semite. I'm white. And so, but they learn. And so they don't allow any negative talk about Jews. But guess what has happened to us?
Right.
We have been programmed, oh, you don't need to talk about us, because we'll call ourselves niggers. We will call ourselves bitches and hoes and gangsters and thugs and bow wows. So we don't mind demeaning and degrading ourselves because we don't understand what's happening, which is why we greet each other by saying, hey, what's happening? We say that 1,000,000 times a day because we don't understand what's going on.
That's so
And
true.
we keep walking in a circle thinking somebody is going to save us other than our saving ourselves. My discussion tonight is about we got to start thinking. And we have to start being serious people. And we have to stop clowning and being buffoons and demeaning and degrading ourselves and demeaning and degrading one another. And we have to stop going to movies where black men are being psychologically castrated and put in dresses and sitting up and laughing at it.
Mm-hmm.
See, if a black man is hung up in a tree and his genitals are cut off, we say, oh, isn't that horrible? But what about a black man who is walking around with his pants down, getting lower and lower and lower, and the next step is he will step out of the masculine dress altogether and put on a dress. Now, he has been psychologically castrated, pants hanging down, crack and buttocks being exposed. That's saying I want a male to put his penis in my rectum.
Mm. But Dr. Wilson, let me ask you this. I think it's very important you brought up these things, because I was thinking about, like, I'm in Memphis, and we just recently voted to consolidate the city schools with the county schools. And it's like we had to have a little mini movement down here to get it done. But when I talk to kids, I work with kids, especially in high school, I ask them, do you think that's a great idea? Because a lot of times the grown-ups don't want to talk to the kids and ask their input about anything. And so I asked some of the kids at different schools, do you think it's a great idea of consolidating the city schools with the county schools? The city schools in Memphis are predominantly black. You know, it's basically a black school system. And the kids say, you know, why should the smart kids want to be with us? We're stupid, we're dumb. These are kids like in 12th grade talking like this.
Well,
we know good.
We have been programmed for the last, 10, 15 years to call ourselves niggers and dogs and bitches and gangsters and thugs, and to repeat, if you're trying to learn how to read, if you're trying to be serious in school, you are acting white.
Right.
So that means that to be black, you have to be stone dumb. Now, this is what the dynamics within the culture are saying to us. And so as long as we don't understand what the culture is saying to us, we're just being moved and programmed by the culture. And because we don't have a counterculture of black self-respect, we have completely lost respect for ourselves as black people. And so this is what we're talking about. You see, we're talking about, wait a minute, we got to change the way we have been programmed to think that black people are supposed to be dumb and stupid and white people are smart. Black drops out of school. White stays in school. You see, all of this is the programming of racism, white supremacy. And this is why Neely Fuller says if you don't understand this system of white supremacy racism, what it is and exactly how it works, everything that you understand will only confuse you. So this discussion tonight is all about we've got to love ourselves, respect ourselves, and transform our behavior.
Dr. Wilson, let me ask you this, too, because I think it's very important that we, I know this is one thing that people talk about, the issue of homosexuality. I know you talk about it in your work, the ISIS papers and the feminization of the black male. And I also look at the fact that so many of our creative geniuses, quote unquote, you look at somebody like Langston Hughes or James Baldwin, or even some of our great civil rights activists like Bayard Rustin, who was a confidant of A. Philip Randolph and Dr. King. So many of our people who contribute were homosexual or bisexual. Like Billy Strayhorn, Duke Ellington's confidant in writing and music. Yeah, do we discredit their work, or do we discredit them?
No. See, it's like, in other words, black people have, when I was growing up in the Baptist church in Chicago, Olivet Baptist Church, my grandfather was a deacon and trustee board. There were men who were homosexual who were gay. There were people on the usher board, people in the choir, people who played the organ. And black people were accepting of those people. You see, black people were not name-calling and demeaning and degrading those people. They were accepted for who they are. Now, what I have done, because even in medicine, we don't know what really are all of the causes of this behavior. But we now, as a black group of people, are seeing an epidemic level of the effeminization of black males. So a scientist will say, I have patients who are homosexual. I have had patients who want to understand why are my behaviors in this way. And I have to say we don't have all of the answers. But one of the things that we are beginning to understand is that when male children do not have male models in the home, they don't know what to do with their behavior. So teachers in the early grades will start seeing young black male children who don't know how to stand up and urinate as a man. Because the only people in the household are mother, grandmother, auntie, some other female who sit on the toilet. They begin to internalize female behavior. And to the extent that the females are there who are longing for a male, the male child begins to internalize that also at a subconscious level. Now, they have chemicals that they're now talking about. Bisphenol A. The chemical that they say is in plastics. And they are saying it's now in the water supply. And they're saying that this chemical will transform fish and frogs, amphibians, change the male to a female.
I heard about this.
So if you are in a system that is fearful of the genetic power of black males, would your warped mind or your mind be programmed, well, I'm going to put this in a hamburger. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
If the Tuskegee syphilis experiments would be conducted, or giving people in Guatemala syphilis, and I maintain that an intelligent black person has to say HIV/AIDS has to be considered as biological warfare until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So,
go ahead.
So I'm just saying, it's not against being against the person who's homosexual. But if you are going to have a community of people that are going to exist for thousands of years, you cannot say that males having sex with each other or females having sex with each other is the equivalent of female and male having sex and reproducing themselves.
I want to ask you, because I know you did a wonderful debate with Dr. William Shockley on the Tony Brown Journal back in, I believe, 74.
Right.
We were talking about eugenics. A lot of people don't understand that we talk about the Nazi Germany, that they have their inspiration from America, in particular California, with a lot of institutions. I know Dr. William Shockley was a professor at Stanford. But he had institutions in California that were funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. That led the way in eugenics. That actually helped Germany with their eugenics program, like Dr. Joseph Mengele and people like that. So a lot of this stuff has traces back home, because I think about Nazism or Nazi Germany, how we use Nazi scientists to build our space program and Nazi military intelligence to build our CIA. So really, I mean, we're a reflection of what went on in Germany back in the 40s, so to speak. But my question is...
See, let me just say this.
Mm-hmm.
Germany is a state that considers itself to be a white state.
Mm-hmm.
The Western countries say that they are white states.
Right.
You see, Patrick Buchanan writes about the death of the West.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so they just use the term West instead of saying white or white supremacy. So the mindset that I've been talking about all evening is the mindset of racism, white supremacy, which is the mindset of white genetic survival by any means necessary. Whether we use chemical warfare, biological warfare, or psychological warfare. So without understanding, see, if you say system of racism, white supremacy, Shockley was just a spokesperson.
Right.
Some of these very wealthy people classify themselves as white, who believed in white genetic survival, also supported institutions that did the same thing, like Shockley was a Nobel Prize laureate.
Yep.
He was one of the inventors of the transistor.
Right.
But he believed in racism, white supremacy, and so his answer was, since black people are genetically inferior in terms of intelligence, then they should be sterilized. You see, so all of these are thought patterns that come out of the racism, white supremacy mindset, which is a mindset for white genetic survival by any necessary means. Now, as long as we don't want to understand in depth what it is, you see, and keep talking about the Illuminati or talking about this or talking about eugenics, and not understanding all of this is about the system of racism, white supremacy. And chances are some of our refusal to talk about it is because we want to be white. You see what I'm saying? So we don't really want to label it.
Right. Well, you know,
what it is.
Well, George Gallagher, he wrote about it. I mean, he wrote about it quite brilliantly in some of his novels. But, like, somebody, you know, leading to what you're saying, somebody in the chat room had this question: how does the Stockholm Syndrome relate to blacks in America?
Well, that's just, it's just people who are under oppression who keep hoping and praying that the oppressor will one day like them. Because the product of the dynamic of oppression has, you know, if you are in prison and the guard comes along and calls you a name every day and spits in your food, and you're locked up and you're caged and you can't do anything about it, and you have to eat the food that you're spitting, you know, they spit.
Right.
Or you don't have a toilet that works and you have to defecate in, plumbing that doesn't work. and all of the humiliations and demeanment that can go with oppression, you have to have a very, very strong mind to not to begin to identify with the oppressor. You see, some people say that the Semites of the Jewish religion who went through a horrific experience in their particular Holocaust, you see, have now been placed by the system of white supremacy in the state of Israel, and then they're behaving towards the Palestinians in the same way that the Nazis behaved towards them.
We got
so it's like, if power overwhelms you, then consciously, subconsciously, you can want to become a part. Like, I would dare say, if you did a survey amongst black people, and you simply ask, you know, the 30 or 40 million black people, who do you prefer to be with? This is March the 9th, 2011. Do you prefer to be with white people, or do you prefer to be with black people? Or if they could take a secret poll and nobody would, you know, a person wouldn't be ridiculed about their answer, would you rather be white or would you rather be black? I dare say the majority of black people would rather be white.
Well, I dare say you might be right on this. I agree.
See, based on how black people behave in relationship to themselves, if you're willing to call yourself a nigger, a dog, a gangster, and a thug, you certainly don't respect that. So
well, you know,
what do you want to be?
Well, you know, Dick Reggie brought a great point up when he talked about Jamaica last week on the show. He talked about this is the home of Marcus Garvey or Bob Marley. But yet one of the things that's killing young people down there, young black people, is bleaching. They are bleaching their skin, and it's killing them. You know.
Again, what did I say about the 3 pills and me becoming richer than Oprah by the end of the week?
You are definitely on point.
We don't, you know, in other words, we have to, at the same time we're talking about this, we have to embrace ourselves and say this is tragic, but this is interesting, what has happened to us. Now, because we understand the system of racism, white supremacy, and the power of that dynamic, we understand why. Now, are we going to respect the creative force that made us black? See, black people think that they're spiritual. And they, you know, we go to church and we're so spiritual and this and this and this. I believe that the creator of the universe that made black people the first people on this planet, and the mothers and fathers of everybody, that creative force is essentially saying to us, look, I made you black for a reason. This is a powerful pigment that you don't have any understanding what the power is that it has. But now you hate it. I made it and gave it to you. And now you hate it, meaning you hate me. And yet you're going to beg me for help? You must be crazy.
We got area code 901-319. You on the air? You want anything to ask Dr. Welsing? 901.
Hey, Brother Ron.
Hey, Brother Morris. Brother White. Brother Morris, got the question. Hey, go ahead and ask him, man. This is great.
Well, I just want to say, really, Dr. Welsing, good evening to you. I really enjoyed listening to you, and I've watched about 20 of your videos on YouTube today, and you are quite a fascinating person. And what I wanted to ask you about, black images in art. And me and Ron had this conversation. We have it quite often because, you know, I'm an artist and a visual one. And one of the questions that I always get asked is, can I paint white people? And why do I only paint black people? And I had a painting that was part of an exhibit, Civil Rights Museum here, that was in conjunction with Memphis College of Art. And it was during Black History Month last month, called Artist Eyes on the Prize. And it was several artists, some from the 60s and some currently. But the thing that really tripped me out, I was telling Ron about, is that I was standing back, not letting anybody know who I was. I was standing back, and they were looking at my painting.
To the comments. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a painting that is that people are. It was the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King here in Memphis, and I painted a scene of people coming forward, and there's probably maybe 100 or so black people coming forward, and I was watching white people trying to find black people, white people in the painting, and trying to count to see if they could find white people. And one man was actually angry because there were no white people in the painting, which there are few, but it's really more of a question. I just sometimes wonder, why does the black image bother people so much? And a positive.
Well, see, I would say that, I mean, if the person was someone who classifies him or herself as white, see, somebody might say, well, how many artists who classify themselves as white are including black people in their paintings? How many filmmakers are including black people in their films other than somebody you see on the periphery or maybe, kind of at a distance passing on the street? Do you see, or why did Michelangelo only paint white? Do you see, I would say the answer to that is that I paint what I see as an artist. I paint what I see in my heart. I'm a black person. I respect black people, and that's the basis of my art to the extent that I want to make it that. Do you see what I'm saying? And say, well, I'm surprised that you don't understand that I respect myself as a black person. This is what I was going to be inspired to paint many times.
Right, and that is what I do. And Dr. Welsing, just to be really brief, and like I said, me and Ron, we're friends. We discuss things, a lot of issues. And one of the issues that I was having is not so much with the white galleries. I understand what's going on there. My problem comes sometimes with our black galleries that want the black people to be in the painting either faceless or featureless or so small that they become insignificant in what's going on in the rest of the painting.
Well, see, in other words, we as black people have been programmed to think negatively about ourselves. So sometimes black people can have a difficult time accepting the black image. But I tell people, in other words, if you really want to help get your mind straight, you will have a picture of a crystal black person in the center of your house, a large picture, not a grotesque-looking person. You see a beautiful picture of a crystal black person. And what you're doing is you're training yourself. This is what we looked at, and this is what we have to respect. Before the grandparents, the great-grandparents were raped in the system of racism, white supremacy. And this is what we have been taught to hate and despise. But this is what we are going to respect at the very highest level, because this is the creative force that made us and made us the mothers and fathers of all of the people on the planet. And black and crystal black is the only color that can create all of the colors. White can only produce white. But black can produce a mutation to white, mix those two together, and we get all the colors in the middle.
Dr. Welsing, thank you so much. And Brother Morris, thank you for that question. Dr. Welsing, you've been
thank you, Dr. Welsing.
Thank you, and keep on painting.
Yes.
I sure will.
He was a phenomenal player.
And you look fabulous, by the way.
Well, thank you. I just hope that I've said something that we can use, because our mission is to replace racism, white supremacy with justice, so there can be peace on this planet. That's our assignment as the planetary parents.
All right. Thank you, Brother Morton. He is a fantastic painter, brilliant artist, and a very wonderful human being altogether. And Dr. Welsing, I'd like to thank you once again for extending your time and sharing yourself, because you are a true treasure of the universe. And it was such an honor to be able to learn, basically at your feet online and beyond. And I know so many brothers and sisters have got so much out of what you had to say. Maybe I'll probably copy and paste what they were saying in the chat room and mail it to you among other things. Okay. But I could end this show with what you wrote, Black Oath, a pledge of allegiance for black people. Like I posted it online on my website, but I like to read it on the air. If you want to read it with me? Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay, it's a pledge of allegiance for black people. I pledge allegiance to my own black self-respect and to the respect of all other black and shades of black people on planet Earth, all of whom are victims of the system of racism, white supremacy. And I pledge to use all of my life, energy, intelligence, and creativity in all areas of people activity to eliminate the global system of racism, white supremacy on planet Earth, and to replace it with justice so that there can be peace. So help me God. And Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, in the words of your fellow great Washingtonian, Duke Ellington, we love you madly, and please know that you are always welcome in the We All Be family.
Well, thank you for having me, and I certainly have enjoyed talking with you. God bless.
God bless you, Dr. Welsing.
Okay.
And good night. Okay. And Sister Jazz, thank you so much as well for being on the air, for hanging out.
Right. Thank you to her.
Thank you.
And all the people who tuned in. And what'd you say, Sister Jazz?
I said thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. You're always welcome back. I like intelligent, beautiful black women and black people in general. But like I said, black don't crack. And thank you once again. Y'all can listen to this in the archives, everybody. Thanks everybody for calling in, and also for the wonderful questions and dialogue in the chat room. And continue to always express yourself on We All Be and Beyond.
Express yourself. Express yourself. You don't never need help from nobody else.